for his closing remarks.
Thank you. I meant to give these remarks as an opening, but I was over on the House floor on the Venezuela resolution, and so I'll give them as a closing. The Trump administration's new national security strategy makes it clear that the Western Hemisphere is a priority for this administration, which is why I'm disappointed that it's taken nearly a year for the administration to send a witness to a hearing at this subcommittee on the Western Hemisphere. The national security strategy revives the Monroe Doctrine with a, quote, Trump corollary, envisioning a United States that exerts its will on our so-called sphere of influence. For Donald Trump, this is an opportunity to put his name on yet another thing. But for the people of Latin America, the Monroe Doctrine harkens back to a dark era that we must not repeat. The Monroe Doctrine has been used by the United States for decades to justify extensive U.S. intervention in the affairs of our Latin American neighbors at the expense of their autonomy and sovereignty. For the people of Guatemala and Chile, the Monroe Doctrine represents U.S.-backed coups of their democratically elected governments. For Haitians, Dominicans, and Mexicans, the Monroe Doctrine recalls repeated U.S. military invasions in the name of security. To Panamanians, it is the legacy of decades-long U.S. control of the Panama Canal at the heart of their country. This administration is returning to a way of operating in Latin America that we rightly rejected after years of failure. We're setting ourselves up to alienate the entire Western Hemisphere for a generation, to the detriment of both our interests and those of the hemisphere. Today's hearing rightly focused on Mexico, a country that is our closest trading partner and arguably our most important bilateral relationship in the world. A strong U.S.-Mexico relationship is essential to both our economic prosperity and our national security. The future of our trade agreement, the USMCA, is vital to both countries, especially to my home state of Texas, that does more trade than any state in the nation. We depend on this trading relationship, and I'm closely tracking the review process. Under President Claudia Sheinbaum, we've seen clear signals of cooperation. Her government has stepped up in meaningful ways, extraditing high-profile fugitives, launching a new federal security strategy, and coordinating more deeply with U.S. agencies than at any time in recent memory. And the United States, to our credit, is beginning to address Mexican concerns that we have long ignored, particularly the flow of U.S. firearms to armed cartels and fuel violence within Mexico. This significant U.S.-Mexico cooperation is why it's so alarming that President Trump continues to float the idea of unilateral U.S. military strikes in Mexico, including as recently as last week. And this isn't hypothetical. On October 27th, the U.S. military conducted a strike off Mexico's coast, an operation the administration has refused to explain to Congress in detail. And let me be clear, this would be a betrayal of a partner and a catastrophic mistake. There is no path to defeating the cartels without Mexican cooperation. Unilateral force would destroy that cooperation overnight. And President Trump must take this reckless option off the table. Beyond Mexico, this administration has launched lethal military operations in the Caribbean and Eastern Pacific aimed, by its own admission, at destabilizing the Maduro regime. These strikes have no legal justification and no transparency. Just yesterday, the President announced a naval blockade of Venezuela, unquestionably an act of war that the Congress has never voted to authorize. And later today, the House will vote on a war powers resolution to direct the President to end hostilities with Venezuela. And I hope a majority of this body will vote to reassert Congress's constitutional authority. Before I close, I want to address the State Department directly. This is the least transparent department that I've seen during my time in Congress. Basic questions go unanswered by people in both parties. There's no consultation before major policy changes. And this committee is still waiting for responses on foreign assistance to Haiti, INL funding in El Salvador, and other critical issues. If today's hearing signals a willingness by the department to engage with the Congress, then that must be followed by immediate action, starting with overdue answers to the questions members of this committee have raised for months. The stakes in this hemisphere are enormous, and we need a foreign policy that treats our neighbors as partners, not as pawns. Now I yield back.